Well, we had a house fire March 2019, and so we've been living in our fifth wheel for a couple of months now. Have a house with a 2-car garage that we've contracted to buy, and so I will get away from having to fix my Jeep in the gravel. I hate working on gravel. I always lose little tools and little screws down where I can't find them. It is just a pain in the neck. Speaking of pain in the neck, I want to talk about the sway bar on my 2011 Rubicon. It's very handy just to be able to sit in your driver's seat and disconnect the sway bar or reconnect it just at the push of a button. Being a basic lazy guy, I don't have to get out, get dirty, whatever. Hook it on, hook it off. Just like the axle locks. I like the electronic axle locks. This is 2020. I've had mine since 2011, and I've done a lot of trail riding with it, gone through a lot of water crossings and so on. Never had a lick of trouble with the electronic lockers. I've got onboard air, so my backup plan someday is if these fail, I will get air lockers. Okay, these are for lights that I put on. When I did this, I ended up messing up this, and I spent 40 or 50 bucks having to buy a whole new switch plate, but that's another story. Anyway, part of my investment in keeping the sway bar going has been having to replace that switch. So explaining about the house fire and no garage is going to help you understand why I am displaying this on a log, because the tree guys cut down this tree the other day, and here we are. This is my workbench. All right. So this is the kind of electronic locker that comes with the JK, I assume with the JL. I have had lots of trouble with this over the years. Chrysler replaced it under warranty back when it was maybe a year or two old. I knew the mechanic. He took this off and actually tested it and found it worked. Nevertheless, Chrysler, under warranty, replaced it and put a new one on. Well, a couple years ago, that new one that they put on failed. And I talked to my friend that had taken this off, and he sold me this one back for 250 bucks. It still worked. Okay, so that's 50 bucks for the switch that I had to replace, $250 for this. Now a couple years later, and this is not working again. I assumed the problem was the actuator. It's kind of nice. It only can go on one direction. You take 3 bolts, I believe they're 15 millimeter, and this comes out. One of these is a positioning sensor, the other engages the actuator in there. Okay, usually this is the part that fails. On mine that I had to take off a couple years ago to install it, this was the part that failed. And I even had it figured out where if I took off the electronics, I could put on a switch on my dashboard to actually still engage and disengage. Just wouldn't have the positioning sensor. Now when this failed a couple years ago, where I was worried this might fail, I bought, to keep in my toolbox, an EVO manual actuator. And again, it only goes on one direction. Let's see, there you go. There is a spring that goes in here against the bolt and fits in there and goes in the actuator. Okay, so last week I put this on. Still didn't work. My sway bar was permanently disconnected. So going down the road, the Jeep swayed badly. Of course, off-road it would be no problem. So I took this whole thing off, and there's again 15 millimeter bolts. I left 2 of them in here just to show you what's going on. Okay, got the last 2 bolts off. So this comes apart, and the way this works is the actuator inside here, whether you use the electronic one or a manual type disconnect, and I think there's a couple of them on the market, it's sort of like a transmission. This piece goes in and out. There's a yoke there. The gear ring fits around the 2 sides, the 2 gears, and either ties them together or lets them operate separately. Okay, so this is supposed to go in and out like a transmission, and this gear either ties ring gear, I don't know what else to call it, either ties the 2, this one and this one together, so it's a solid sway bar, or this goes in and allows the two to slip past each other, and that's when your sway bar is disconnected. So I discovered there was just enough moisture in here that this mechanism in here is rusted up. Put it in the sunlight for you. Can you see that's rusted up? Just enough so that when the actuator pushes against this, instead of this sliding in and out real easy, it hangs up in there. And this is just rough enough that it hangs up and was not allowing my sway bar to reconnect for on-road driving. It felt very unsafe. I'm sure I would have had more chance of it rolling and things like that. Okay, so I thought about cleaning this up, buffing it up with some steel wool or what have you, trying to get this actuator to move smoothly, putting it back together, maybe trying my electronic actuator, because I hadn't really tested it, I just assumed it was bad, or the hand one that I got from EVO. But I have decided, the heck with it, just do away with this Chrysler one and put a manual disconnect on the front end. So my first point in this whole YouTube is to point out that if you have this kind of setup and you want to keep it working right, part of your maintenance is going to be to drop the whole thing, probably every winter. I would just drop it every winter, take it all apart, clean it up, make sure there's no rust going on, re-lubricate everything and put it back together, and probably seal these up better with some automotive silicone so water doesn't get in there, and hope for the best. I would also keep one of these in your toolbox so that if you're off the road away from home quite a ways, it's not going to mess you up if this thing decides to break. Usually the problem is water gets in here and fries the circuit board that's in there. I don't position myself as an expert in all this stuff. I'm just doing what seems to work for me. Okay, but I will put links to show you what I happen to buy. This is an adjustable linkage. Okay, I'm going to call it sway bar end link. I think that's what it's really called, but that's what I call it, sway bar end link, adjustable. This is rough country. And down below is a pin that I will pull out when I go off a trail. And then there is a bracket that is going to mount up on the frame rail to keep all this out of the way. I just want to show that I have installed the driver's side. Pretty easy installation. Okay, I have not put the bracket on here yet. There is a piece that is going to go, actually I'm going to mount it up here out of the way, and the rubber piece is going to go over this thing that my pinky's pointing at, and the locking pin is going to go through it to stop it from coming off, so it gets out of the way and doesn't get in the way of the springs or anything. Now on the passenger side, I'm going to connect this down, but there's a little different design over here because there's a whole tracking bar and so on. Okay, I'm going to have to take a grinder and take off this. The lower end, the bolt went all the way through on the factory sway bar end. I'm going to have to cut this off so that the sway bar bolt will come out of here and the new sway bar will connect. At this point, that's what we're going to be doing, is grinding that off. All we do is we take this off of where it's been held, and I was a little worried because I thought, well, goodness, what do we do? It doesn't fit. Well, actually, you just have to undo the other side first. This goes up, this slides down and goes on there, and the pin goes through there, and then it's all ready for street use. Right now I'm putting the other bracket on, so I want this up here out of the way, and then I'll know where the other bracket needs to be mounted. Okay, so I just took it out for a spin around the block with my son, and it drives great, feels much better. Lower end is going to be unhooked for trail use. For street use, this is connected. There is a bracket mounted up here like I showed on the other side. This is the driver's side, obviously. So this gets hooked up here. Passenger side is similar. This will come off for trail use and get hooked up here to to the bracket. The pin goes through on both sides to keep this locked up and out of the way. And I won't have to worry anymore about the electronic sway bar getting full of water, rusted up, and quitting on me. No more expenses for this thing either. It will be a little bit of trouble when we go on the trail, but much less trouble than all the taking off and putting on that I've had to do over the years with this sway bar connect. So I hope I've showed you something that's useful if you're going to keep the electronic sway bar, some maintenance tips for you, and if you are fed up with it like I was, one way to avoid it and to do away with it entirely. Thanks for watching.
Hey everybody, this is Ariel the Jeep Dog. Thanks for watching our video, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button down there.